Welcome to the Deans and Directors Lecture, to Skibble, our home for literacy, and all the variety of things that our staff here does to try and enhance the capacities of young people in South Carolina to achieve. As we like to say, kids who read succeed. It's a gorgeous day out there. I just walked across from the Hollings Library, across the Horseshoe to come over here to Skibble. Skibble is the acronym compounded into 2 syllables. And it's kind of a place that we treasure. But it's an interesting thing. The university, and we don't always recognize or revel as much in it as we should, all that takes place within the university environment, of which this is just one thing that's going on this evening. For example, as I crossed the Horseshoe, there were young students out there barefooted with hula hoops. Does that take you back a ways? And if you crossed Green Street, there were people dancing out there in substantial numbers with a lot of sort of old rock music. And I was coming from the Hollings Library, where our sister school, the School of Journalism and Mass Communications, is this weekend putting on its 3rd biannual symposium on media and civil rights. Congressman Jim Clyburn was speaking when I ducked out. Double booking is a challenge in this institution. And what we were noting, and this is a program that is put together by the faculty in the journalism school and the graduate students over there, talking about how much have we progressed in terms of civil rights over the years. We are in this year, in 2015, noting, observing, marking 50 years from Selma. And we have to be cognizant that 50 years from Selma, we have still experienced the problems of Ferguson, Missouri. And yet, as Congressman Clyburn was saying, a lot of people look back and say, well, 50 years, where have we come? And LBJ's Great Society was a failure, some would say, not the congressman. And among the things that he cited that also took place in 1965 were all of those things that made up the Great Society, among which was Head Start. And so I thought it highly appropriate and a perfect sort of balance bookend to what we're talking about over here. And if I quote Congressman Clyburn correctly, is that the greatest thing that ever helped prepare kids for school was Head Start. So we do our own little part here with the South Carolina Center for Children's Books and Literacy, and with Cocky's Reading Express, and with Young Palmetto Books, and all the things that compose our literacy initiative. And in that context, I do hope that you'll take a look around, see what we do, and let us know what we can do to help your communities, and maybe even what you can do to help us. So thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Sam.
Tonight we have Dr. David Miller, the director of the Center for Digital Humanities, is going to introduce our speaker. I asked Dr. Miller to do this tonight because he is an integral part of our hub association with the Digital Public Library of America. It's the Center for Digital Humanities and the Digital Projects Lab in Thomas Cooper Library, the Charleston,
The folks at
College of Charleston are part of it, a whole bunch of people. Anyway, so David Miller, please come forward.
Thank you, Sam, for the opportunity to join you in celebrating tonight the accomplishments of your faculty and staff and graduating students. It's quite wonderful. And speaking of graduation, tonight's speaker, Emily Gore, received her bachelor's degree from a little-known land-grant university near the Georgia state line. And from that humble beginning has gone on to do great things. Great things. Her MLIS is from the University of Alabama, where I taught for 16 years, but I don't think we overlapped. But it's a great campus.
Roll Tide.
Yeah, Roll Tide. She's a graduate of the Frye Leadership Institute of the Council on Library and Information Resources. She served as Associate Dean for Digital Scholarship and Technology in the Florida State Library System, State University Library System, and for 15 years has worked to build the kinds of collaborations among archives, libraries, and museums with digital assets that in 2010 resulted in the formation of the Digital Public Library of America. The ambitious vision of this rapidly growing network of digital resources is supported by a who's who roster of public and private funding agencies. Emily works as Director of Content for the DPLA, and I assume that means she had a hand in the strategic plan that was published in January of this year. She has direct oversight of the DPLA Hubs program, in which South Carolina Digital Library is featured as a service hub, aggregating digital materials from some 40 archives across the state, including our own digital collections, which makes available materials from libraries and collections across this campus, as well as from libraries at USC Aiken, Beaufort, and Lancaster. I'm sure that everyone here understands the epical importance of the ongoing translation of our system of archives into new media. So it would be a special pleasure to hear one of the leaders in that effort talking about what she calls, in the title for her talk tonight, the path forward. Please join me in welcoming Emily Gore.
So thank you for having me, even though I graduated from that college near the Georgia state line. I appreciate it. I'm going to talk to you a little bit tonight about the Digital Public Library of America and kind of where we're going. How many people have heard of DPLA before I came in the room? All right, so a good amount of you. For those of you who haven't, the Digital Public Library of America is really what our mission is to try to create a national digital library for the country by aggregating data from libraries, archives, and museums into one single system where that's discoverable from anywhere, so through a portal or via API and reuse. So I'm going to talk a little bit tonight about kind of how we got started, and then I'm going to talk about where I think we're going with this data. I have to say it's really nice to be in a library school setting again, and seeing people who are enthusiastic for knowledge, and you guys are getting ready to go out and have wonderful careers and have an impact on this field. So hopefully tonight maybe I'll impart a little wisdom about a little bit working on the digital side of things. So I wanted to say thanks for having me, and I wanted to do that using an illustration that you find in the Digital Public Library of America that doesn't come from South Carolina, just to illustrate that materials from our libraries, archives, and museums aren't geographically specific, right? This is from the New York Public Library digital collection. They have lots of materials about South Carolina, from South Carolina, as do the National Archives, the Smithsonian, many other participants who we work with to pull their data together. So if you're interested in South Carolina history, you can really find a lot of materials without having necessarily to go to the physical locations to get those materials. I think that's just one of the important things that we bring, and there's just some really neat things that we're pulling together. So again, our goal is to create a national digital library for the country, and to pull together data from all across our states so that it is discoverable in one platform. So just today, I noticed that my number is already off. I just created these slides and we already have close to 9 million today. We're doing a lot of active loading of new content in the Digital Public Library of America in preparation for our we have an annual conference called DPLA Fest, and it's actually in a couple of weeks, and it's in the mid-April, and we always kind of have a big push right before DPLA Fest to kind of get some big numbers, and I think this year we're actually going to make that 10 million mark. So it's really, we started at 2.4 million items, and just in a very short time we've aggregated 10 million, and we're growing every day. So really excited about that. These are just some quick shots of different items in the DPLA, and again 8.7 million, which I think is really 8.9, and growing. This slide really just kind of shows you some of the richness and diversity of materials in the DPLA. So they're graphically oriented materials, manuscripts, videos, audio clips, you name it, you can find it in the Digital Public Library of America, because we are working with diverse cultural heritage institutions throughout the country. So we're pulling data from libraries, archives, and museums. Historical societies often get left out of that phrase, but there are a number of institutions that we're pulling data from and making it available. So our website is kind of crazy. The URL is dp.la. I could talk to you for a long time about why we have that URL, but it's fairly easy to remember. Just remember to put the dot in between the 4 letters. Unfortunately, the people who have dpla.org will not give it up. So we've tried very hard, but just remember dp.la, and that's our portal. So this is what the portal looks like. I did have a hand in creating the portal because you will see Harvey Gantt, and you will see Clemson highlighted on the Explore by Pace. Yes, I did. Yes, have a hand in this. I do admit it. So many people see me and know me and say, "You had something to do with that." Yeah. All right. But anyway, you can forgive that, maybe. But this is the portal. So this is the front door to the DPLA. So when you go, this is how you interact and find materials. So you can search. You can also explore. We have a number of wonderful curated exhibitions that you can interact with. We just released one on women aviators and a history of women aviators that's getting a lot of great play. And most of these have actually been created by our hubs. So the libraries, archives, and museums who contribute data to the DPLA, they're actually creating these curated exhibits as well. So there's wonderful, rich history in these. And people, I love that I'm able, normally I stand in front of a microphone and I have to say, sorry, the accent's Southern, and I'm from North Carolina. If you don't understand what I'm saying, just wave your hand. But I don't have to do that tonight. So. But anyway, I often say, in the South, we love a good story. And that's the truth. And people love these exhibitions because they tell very rich stories. They don't just give the object and the metadata, they actually tell a story, right? You can go through and learn about that, and people really like to interact with those. So the exhibitions next to that search box, that's the highest hits on the DPLA after the search box. So people like to interact. You can also explore by place and by date. So we have a map of the U.S. and you can really drill down and see rich detail based on geographic encoding for where the data actually comes from. So if you're maybe an avid genealogist like I am, who has a lot of family in North Carolina and South Carolina, I do a lot of zooming in to kind of find materials around both states and see what we have related to local history that then ties into family history as well. Exploring by date, you can use it as a browse function, so you can see what we have from all kinds of different eras. If you want to just look for particular dates, you can also search and then limit that by date. So we try to give a lot of access through the portal, so different points of access to the data, so that people can bring whatever knowledge they're coming with to the table. And if they just want to dig around, there's ways to do that as well and learn. So not only are we a portal, but we're a platform. So I loved that somebody got an award for hacking. I'm all about it. So we can talk about hacking tonight, hacking solidarity. When I say we're a platform, we do a number of things at the DPLA. We have an open API. Some of you probably don't know what that means, and that's okay. What that means is that it's an application programming interface. And so we give a set of instructions to people on how they can actually interact with the data and how they can build applications on top of the data. So we make the data available, and then people can do with it as they will. And so you'll see behind me on the screen here, just a quick screenshot of a number of the apps that have been built on top of the data store at the Digital Public Library of America. So I'm going to explore a couple of them in a little bit, but you can see it's just some of this, like this OpenPix app. It's really cool. It's an iOS, so if you have an iPhone or an iPad, you can download this app, and it'll use your it'll use your location on your phone, and you can find out materials from the DPLA around you. So as you're walking around, you can see. And where we have hubs, that's extremely powerful because there's a lot of data. So like doing it here in Columbia, you'd actually be able to see materials around you. I found some neat shots earlier when looking for materials. There's some ruins and other wonderful shots of Columbia. So just to kind of take you back as to where we started, when the project kind of launched in a phase where we built community. So I've been talking with people individually tonight. The project did grow out of Harvard, so several of you remember that. So we worked at Harvard initially with the folks at the Berkman Center for Internet and Society really led this kind of planning phase and building community. So people from all walks, from libraries, archives, and museums, professionals who were really interested in what a potential digital library could be, a national digital library could be, came together in planning sessions and plenaries throughout the country. I was lucky to be there for all of them. At the time I was working at Florida State, and I was able to kind of participate in those and help think about what what we could do with the Digital Public Library of America. And then after that building community phase, we really got to working. I was lucky to be the very first staff member at the Digital Public Library of America. So in the beginning, there was me. And then we formed a nonprofit, hired an executive director, and we now have 13 staff members. So we've grown significantly in the past couple of years. So in the year 2013, we were really in startup mode. So we needed to launch the Digital Public Library of America. We, as Sam said, we have a wonderful list of funders who have funded us through the years, and some of those we made some promises early on that we would get some stuff up online real quick. And when I say real quick, I mean real quick. So we had a very short timeline to launch the Digital Public Library of America, and we were successful at doing that. Some days I really was not sure we were going to be, but we launched, and we launched initially with 2.4 million items in the data store. And a couple handfuls of partners. I certainly called on friends and family and people that I knew, and some of those folks were right here in South Carolina, and I'm grateful for them. So South Carolina was one of the initial hubs to contribute data to the DPLA. In 2014, we've really been focusing on building a solid foundation. So we've really been rebuilding the technology stack. Or firming that technology stack up. So when we launched, we had a launch in mind. This might be some lessons on what not to do. There always are those. We were focused on a launch. We were focused on getting off the ground and getting that portal up and getting a documented API going. But as we move forward, it's really more about building a solid foundation and connecting with the community at large. So you might have seen just yesterday or the day before, we just got a large, I think maybe one of the largest grants IMLS has ever given out, a $2 million grant from IMLS to build on, we're going to work on a Hydra infrastructure framework. So those of you who know digital library software, it's a Fedora backend with a Hydra front end. So all that to say, we're really excited about continuing to build on a solid foundation and to interact with the community at large. I think that's one of the things that we're really most proud of, is that there is already an existing community of open source development going on throughout libraries. and archives and museums, and we want to come together and really be a leader in this area. And so working with Stanford and the folks at DuraSpace, we're actually going to make that happen and move forward on this platform. So we're very excited about that. The strategic plan was mentioned earlier, and we worked real hard to get this out so that people could kind of have an idea as to where we're going and what we're thinking. So you can visit this short little URL if you'd like and kind of see that. I'm going to highlight some of those things for you tonight, so you might not want to read it. That's all good. So one of the keys in moving forward is where we started, and always having a focus around community. I don't think we're unique in a digital library in that. I think all libraries have a focus on community. The communities may be different, but nonetheless, I think the key focus on community is there. So DPLA is all of us. So DPLA is hubs. So we'll talk a little bit about hubs, but those are our contributors. Those are the people that actually provide data to DPLA. DPLA is our community reps. So they're people who actually talk about DPLA out in the community, who give brief presentations, who are able to kind of say, yes, this is a great thing, and be a champion for us on the ground. We have about 250 of them throughout the country right now. DPLA is developers, those hacker types. We love them. We like to make data available, and we like to interact with developers so that they can work with us to build unique, innovative tools. DPLA is webinar or open call participants. We had a webinar about a month ago on metadata aggregation. We had about 400 people on that call. I had no idea there were 400 people in the country who actually cared about metadata aggregation. So my heart was warmed by the thought that people actually do care about metadata aggregation. And DPLA is interested culture heritage professionals, just people who are interested in the fact that we are forming a national digital library, and what I like to call open glamours. So open glamours are people who are all about promoting openness in galleries, libraries, archives, and museums. So if you're one of those people, call yourself an open glamour. So there's a great community called the Open Knowledge Foundation that really supports this work. So if you want to look into that, please do. So this is just a visual to show you a little bit about what the DPLA network looks like. So the yellow dots are hubs that we work with individually, so institutions that we have a one-to-one relationship with. So those are what we call content hubs. They're people like the Smithsonian, the National Archives. They're large institutions that give us a lot of data directly. The orange dots represent service hubs, and you'll see that they actually have other gray dots hanging off of them. So I'll use South Carolina as a great example. So South Carolina has a service hub for DPLA, and there are lots of gray dots hanging off. There are many contributors, small institutions, large institutions around the state that contribute to one centralized aggregation that the College of Charleston actually performs. And then they send that aggregation straight to the DPLA. So all this data comes in, College of Charleston aggregates it, and they send it up to DPLA. So that's the way the South Carolina hub works, and I think the numbers are somewhere around 40 participants and growing. I know I talked to Heather Gilbert down at College of Charleston quite a lot, and they're really excited about the work that is moving forward. I'll also say what's wonderful about the synergies in South Carolina is that South Carolina is also working on the Fedora Hydro project, which we just got the large grant for. So there's lots of synergies around technology going on as well. So it's an exciting time, and we're really happy with our partnership in many states, but definitely in South Carolina. So this is what the current hubs map looks like. So again, same color scheme. It's a lot of orange for y'all, I know, but so the service hubs here are orange, and then there's a little bit of burnt red, orange around in the Mountain West. So the Mountain West is a service hub that actually represents a number of different states. So they actually aggregate data from 5 different states. So they pull data from a fairly large region. And then we have, individual states represented: Texas, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Massachusetts, and others. We are growing rapidly. We just announced 4 new hubs, one nearby in the state of Tennessee that will be coming on very soon, run by the University of Tennessee in conjunction with in partnership with the State Library. So lots of new hubs going on. I was just on the phone on the way down here with the National Public Radio. I've been talking a lot with PBS. I've been talking a lot with other states who are pulling together data. So it's a really exciting time. People want to be a part of this data store and of this aggregation, and we want them to as well. So here's a list of our current service hubs and our current content hubs, the people we work with in a network and the people we work with on a one-to-one basis. So you'll recognize many names on the list, including folks like the Hottie Trust, potentially, who is a very large data store, and we pull together anything that's open from the Hottie Trust. So sometimes people will say, well, how do you get all the data from Hottie Trust and Art Store? So the data we get from them are they're the open materials, the things that you don't have to have, that are not behind a paywall. So I have to do hub math a lot, and I'm really bad at it because I can never remember how many hubs we have at a given time, because we're always kind of adding here and there. But right now, at this very moment, we have 13 content hubs and 9 service hubs, and that represents about 1,350 different institutions throughout the country. As I said, that's really growing. We're getting ready to have, any day now, 15 content hubs and 15 service hubs, and that represents well over 1,500 partners. So more and more small institutions. So you see the small number in the 13 and 9, but that large number in those individual institutions. So those little gray dots, there's wealth in these small institutions in this country, and most people don't know it. Even if those people have had a website, their materials aren't necessarily discoverable, but we're making them discoverable by putting them alongside with all the rest of the materials throughout the country. And that, I think, people are really excited about, especially in these small institutions. So I wish I could snap my fingers and this magic happened behind me. It is happening, but it's really not this fast. But the goal really is to light up the map. If you read the strategic plan, our goal is to grow and have an access point to the DPLA for every cultural heritage institution in the country, no matter what state they're in. So the goal is to allow libraries and archives and museums, historical societies, you name it, to be able to contribute data to their hub in their respective state, and to get that material online. And we're doing that fairly rapidly. We implemented an application process this past year. We started at the beginning with what I like to call the coalition of the willing. So those people at the beginning who were like, yes, we'll come join you down this road. And we love those people, and we will always love our coalition of the willing. But now we really are kind of at the point where we need people to kind of, prove people that they're serious about becoming a hub and know what the requirements are, and to begin a conversation back and forth with us. So we've implemented an application process, and that's gone fairly well. That's the first 4 that we've just we've named new hubs, and we expect a lot more. There's going to be a new call this summer, so probably be announced in mid-June, and we hope to name a new class by July. So really excited about a lot of great work going on in states like Michigan and Ohio, and a number of other, California. I'm going out there very soon. So a lot of work going on in the states to actually get these hubs formed, which is exciting. So this kind of gives you an idea of the contributors by institution type. So you can see university libraries just outweigh public libraries right now as far as the content contributed to the DPLA, but not much. So obviously we've got more content coming from libraries than any other source. We have a decent amount coming from museums and historical societies, about 12% from museums and about 11% from historical societies. I always tell people that Minnesota skews historical societies. One of the things I've learned in working this project I've learned a great deal, but one of them I've learned is that from state to state, relationships are very different among cultural heritage institutions. So in Minnesota, why I say Minnesota, the Historical Society number is skewed, is that the public libraries there work with historical societies, and the historical societies really hold that data. So they keep they're the preservers of the historic information, and the public libraries work with them. They send them to the historical societies. So they have a wonderful relationship, but they have this amazing network of historical societies that just sometimes doesn't exist in other states, and people don't have those relationships. So it's been very interesting to work with the different states and to see what kinds of relationships cultural heritage institutions have with each other and how things work from state to state. I like to joke, but it is the truth. We are working in about 50 different countries. That's how I feel. Every state is very different. So every time I go to work with a new state, I have to kind of learn the politics and the lay of the land and kind of figure out and to help people work together and to help cultural heritage institutions who may not have had a whole lot of history of working together, bridge some of those gaps. There's some therapy work in my degree as well. So one of the other things you'll see in the strategic plan is growing specific material types. So I mentioned earlier that I had chatted with NPR today. One of the things we really want to do is grow audio and video materials and the availability of open, discoverability of open materials in the DPLA, and pulling that data together. So I got really excited talking to the NPR librarian about, wouldn't that be a cool job when you love to be the NPR librarian? I would. She was like, oh, we have all these links to fresh air and all things considered. And I was like, very cool, very cool. She's like, going back to 2008, we can provide access to all this stuff. I thought, oh, this is amazing. But working with museums and others to provide materials that we don't have a ton of, that's something we want to do, and we're really working in those specific communities to build up participation. So I mentioned community reps. That's another key piece of our community, and these are just some of the lovely faces for people throughout the country who actually participate as community reps and talk about and represent DPLA. Sam, you are a community rep. Awesome. So, do what? Oh, you might have. I don't know. This is like a very narrow screenshot of the community reps. There are a few faces on there that I certainly recognize. This is the map of kind of where the community reps are located. So you can actually interact with it on the DPLA website if you're interested, and kind of click and see information about the community reps. But those people really are our voices on the ground. With a small staff, it's really difficult to get the word out about DPLA by yourself. So it's really nice to have people who are DPLA evangelists, I like to call them, on the ground. Jimmy Swaggart. So anyway, community also is developers. So we've had a number of hackathons held throughout the country in conjunction with other conferences. Conferences like Code for Lib, which is a great conference where we are well represented every year, but also in other spaces, in places like the Chattanooga Public Library. If you haven't visited that space, you should. It's an awesome space, and they're doing really innovative things for a public library. They've got great maker spaces and all these community functions really being built there. And one of the first events that they held for us was a hackathon with over 100 people in a room hacking away at the DPLA code and building apps. And some of our first apps actually came out of that Chattanooga Public Library hackathon. It amazes me how many hackers we have in the library space. I think it is wonderful. So go ahead, I love it. Girls who code. One of the tools that's been built is Serendipomatic. So how many people have heard of Serendipomatic? Nobody. One person. All right. Okay. So I'm glad because I love this tool. So if you were like me, and you probably weren't, you're probably much more conscientious than I was as a student. But I wrote many a paper the night before that it was due. A paper. Some of my finest work came after midnight, many nights. If I had had a tool like Serendipity to help me find primary source materials throughout the country, I would have been very excited, and my papers might have been better than they were. But what's wonderful about Serendipity is it's a tool that was built, so it's actually a digital humanities hackathon. People come together. It's a week called 1 Week, 1 Tool at the Center for History and New Media, and folks come throughout the country, and they all work together to build one tool in a week. And this past year's tool is called Serendipity. So if you go to the website, serendipity.org, you can feed it whatever you'd like. So I was always somebody that could write a really good thesis statement, and then the trouble began. So if you have a good idea that you can put in Serendipity, few phrases, sentences, put them in there, hit the go button, and what will happen is that it has an engine that extracts in the important keywords that you've written in your paragraph or in whatever it is that you've written. It'll pull out key phrases, what it thinks are key phrases, and then it matches them, and it uses open APIs. So it uses the DPLA open API, but it also uses Europeana, which is Europeana is the European version of DPLA that existed 5 years before we existed. So Europeana has over 30 million records that they've aggregated from throughout Europe. So it uses Europeana, it uses Trove from Australia, it uses the Flickr Commons API, and so it pulls data from all of these different sources and returns results. So I wrote something about Columbia, and it pulled in Carolina, Columbia, South. And these are just, when there's not a thumbnail, it has this lovely image there. That's the Serendipity mascot. But when there is a thumbnail represented, all you have to do is kind of scroll over those images, and it tells you. So several of these actually came from the South Caroliniana library here, and some of them came from NARA. So when you scroll over them, it tells you where they came from. You click on them, it goes directly to the resource. What's really cool is DPLA is nowhere here, right? Where we are is invisible to the user. Where we are is in an API. Where we are is in one big data store and in an application programming interface that somebody interacted with that pulled that data. But the data goes straight to you, to the Cultural Heritage Institution. So that click goes straight to the University of South Carolina's material, and not yet another click through DPLA. So it's a way that we are a kind of data broker, if you will. And one of the things I really love is that our hub out in the Mountain West, that one that has all the states that work with it, they had a list of top referrers that they obviously we have to have. We're bean counters. We have to have statistics, right? We have to make sure we're important. And one of the top referrers, so their top referrer was DPLA for a very long time over Google, which we were very proud of. But down the list of referrers, I think somewhere in the 5 or 6 slot, was Serendipity. How cool is that? So again, it's the reuse of that data. So they're putting their data in one place, but it's being used in multiple places. So that's the power. This is one of my very favorite quotes, and I put it in almost every presentation I give. The best thing to do with your data will be thought of by someone else. So I think one of the things I'm just going to stand here and say tonight is people who are entering the field, I think I encourage you to think beyond your doors and beyond where your people coming to you, but instead being a steward and putting that data out and watching what can happen and the power of what other people can do when you put your data out there. It's a very exciting time to be in libraries. I think it's the most exciting time that we've been in, and I look forward to the next, well, I'm hoping for a short career, but I'm assuming I'll probably be doing this for at least another 15. So to wrap up the community piece, I really encourage you to get involved with DPLA if you're interested in doing so. We have a Get Involved space on our website, and you can look and you can see and learn more about DPLA and what we're trying to do and the different ways that you can interact with us. So another key piece for us moving forward is data quality. So a lot of this stuff you don't have to pay attention to, but the points here are we're trying to keep up. So we're trying to make sure that we are interacting in the right spaces and making sure that everything we do is really community focused. So we just released a new version of our metadata application profile. What's cool about our metadata application profile is that it's very high level. So people ask me all the time, what kind of metadata schema do you take? Pretty much the kitchen sink is the answer to that. So the National Archives has their own metadata schema. They do things differently than other people. Everyone has their own flavor of metadata, even if people say I'm following Dublin Core. People implement Dublin Core in very different ways. I like to say metadata is like toothbrushes. It's lots of variety out there. So again, we're kind of building on those community standards, working to build models that are high level and that really reference open data and take advantage of the network going on outside of us. If you really like things like this, this is just a quick screenshot to show you the visualization of the metadata profile for those of you who love metadata. For those of you who don't, that's okay too. It took me a long time to love metadata. I mentioned at the beginning about us investing in new technology. So one of the things that we've been working on, we've been taking a brief break and had a hiatus for development for a while we really focused on building out that technology stack. So we've developed a new metadata harvesting, mapping, and enhancement system. So when people bring those, we get those data in from all of our partners, we have a new system that really decouples those processes. So before, when we did those processes, we had to do them all at once and they were all kind of coupled together. And our stack was not RDF aware, and what that means is that we can interact in a world, a space of linked data. Which we really think that's where the world is moving. The name of the new system, of the metadata aggregation system, comes from a goat. Here is the picture of the goat. You can find him on Wikipedia. So Hydron is our technology folks have odd sense of humor. So we have all these new goat names. For everything they're developing, there's some sort of goat code name, which I think is awesome. So this is a project that's near and dear to my heart. And when we talk about data quality, to me, this is the linchpin of us moving forward. This is a visualization done by Dean Farrell, who works in the libraries at the University of North Carolina. And this shows the first 26,000 different rights statements in the DPLA. So anybody who's ever completed metadata for a digital object, you know that there is a statement that you write what it is that you're able to do with the data. It's a free text field at this point, so people write a lot of stuff in there. This is the first. He just took 1.5 million records out of the DPLA, and there are 26,000. From that 1.5 million, there are 26,000 different right statements. We estimate there are about 85,000 in the full data set and growing every day. So all that to say, the different categories here are kind of like the dark orange in the top is just small. The number of Creative Commons licenses that we actually have is very small. The light blue represents things that are actually labeled as public domain objects. So those are the two really smallest things that we have. And then the others are different kinds of rights restriction. So one is clearly in copyright, and another one may be we're not real sure, have at it, we don't really know, or very vague statements. You'll find some really, really vague statements in the DPLA under right statements. I'm going to pick on South Carolina a little bit while I'm here. You're also going to find people claiming copyright over scanned images. So when you take a photograph and you put it on a scan bed and you hit the button, that does not create a new copyright. But there are a lot of people who in the past have thought that that creates a new copyright. And South Carolina is not the only institution in the DPLA that does this. There are actually a number of people, a number of our partners who claim copyright over digital images. And that's one of the things we're going to work to correct, is actually to get rights labeled appropriately. Well, it's almost been a year now. We got a grant from the Knight Foundation, and that grant is allowing us to build a framework for right statements. So where I told you they were free text, what we're trying to do is build a framework where they're not free text anymore, where you have the ability to pick from a set of standardized right statements as an institution. So you're able to say, this is in the public domain, and you're able to say it with authority and as linked data, so you're able to go and point to a URL and then that statement populates. So that statement would be an automatic thing and everyone's would be the same. So we've been working with our friends over at Europeana, so that European cultural aggregator that I talked about, as well as Creative Commons. Many of you might be familiar with Creative Commons. The Creative Commons licenses will be a part of whatever it is that we publish for right statements. So all of the Creative Commons options will be among the options for new statements. So why are we doing this? Is good. Is the first reason. The second reason is we should, as cultural heritage institutions, want to properly label our materials, and we shouldn't want to impose rights that we don't really have over materials. Most of the time, we as cultural heritage institutions don't have the rights to the materials. The creator had the rights, and they gave us those materials to be cultural stewards over those materials. And in that stewardship relationship, we often have an obligation, I believe, to make those materials available, and to do so in the broadest way possible. When you actually label rights correctly. So this is Europeana's website. They've been working on rights labeling for a number of years now. One of the things you can do is actually go in and say, I want to limit by images, and I only want to see things in the public domain, or I only want to see things that have a Creative Commons license. So it empowers us as users to be able to know, okay, I find these things, now I know what I can do with them. I can actually reuse them. I can put these things in a presentation. I can take this and steal it and put it on my website, because public domain, folks, means just that. It belongs to the public. It's not ours to hold. It really belongs to the public, and we should profess that and put things out. So this is an example, and one of the things that Europeana has done, you can see underneath this image, it says public domain marked. So it's clear that this image, as a user, if I find this, I know that I can do with this as I want, which is a great, powerful tool on the web. So this is just a list of all the working group members, the folks who've been working tirelessly on this. We hope to produce, we are slavishly producing white papers, and any day now we're going to release them, and there'll be a statement, there'll be a set of white papers. One is on the actual statement, so what we propose the statements to be and why we're proposing them to be that. And then another one is on the governance, and another one is on the technology framework, how we're going to do this. There'll be a 45-day comment period for people to make comments on this framework before the framework is finalized. So you can look for that on our website, and we'll be on the Twitters and everywhere else kind of pushing it out. So letting people know that it's out there and for people to be able to make comment. What this does, what proper rights labeling really does, is enable reuse. DPLA has a strong commitment to openness. all metadata that comes into the DPLA has a Creative Commons 0 license on it. Basically, what that means is all metadata is in the public domain. We declare it to be so. That really, I think, is a basic tenet of us. We've always shared metadata, right? Until we had people try to claim copyright over it. But really, there is no copyright over metadata. Metadata is fact. A title is a title, an author's name is an author name, right? We may have a little creativity in description, but metadata is fact. And what we're saying is that people want to be able to reuse metadata. Again, I mentioned that open application programming interface that's well documented. The rights labeling campaign that we're about to launch and that new framework really is the beginning of that step in direction for broader use and for reuse. We are also considering working potentially to be a public domain repository. A lot of our partners have said, we'd love to go one place and find things in the public domain held by cultural heritage institutions, because right now we don't know. So if we could potentially grab items and put them in one place so everyone knows that these are clearly for reuse, then that's a possibility and it's something that we're thinking about. We're also thinking about a new technology. So this is something I would love to have known about as a library school student. So here I am sharing this with you. There's a new spec, if you will, a new standard. It's called the International Image Interoperability Framework. It's coming out of Stanford. A lot of great things coming out of Stanford. It's coming out of Stanford, a number of international partners working on it as well. What it does is allow us to share our images by simply following a protocol and installing a little software on our servers to be able to serve up an image, and then someone else who has that same, who can interact with that, can pull that image into an interface. So again, this is a shot of kind of where we are currently, and we need to get away from so many things labeled copyright, all rights reserved, and really appropriately labeling materials that are in the public domain. This purple slice, digital image copyright, 7%. Those are people claiming copyright by just pressing a scan button. So we need to move past this and actually get things labeled appropriately. Europeana has worked over time to do this. This is just to show where they started and how many they just had totally unlabeled, how many right statements they had totally unlabeled, and where they've gotten to now. So they're actually, they have a lot more labeled in the public domain and have Creative Commons license on a number more. So one of my favorite forward-thinking museums in the world is the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. If you haven't been, you should go. It's an awesome place. But if you can't go there physically, you can visit them virtually online, and you can visit them virtually online and do powerful things with their data. So here are some amazing works of art that they make available. I like this they have a little toolbar down there at the bottom, and you can click that toolbar. So this screenshot is to say, I hear a lot from cultural heritage professionals, we can't put that stuff online because we make money from it. If you really factor in the staff hours that it takes to make the materials available, the money made on copies and reproductions in most cultural heritage institutions is in the negative. And I would argue that into the ground with most people. There are some institutions who do make money, that is true. But what's cool about the Rijksmuseum, one of the world's most renowned art museums, is that they say, here, you can order this work, you can get it on a postcard, you can print it on canvas. These are ways you can pay for materials online. But you don't have to pay. You can also download this, and I love the and get creative. So you can take this and do cool things with it. You can also just order a canvas if you'd like. So these things can coexist. They can work in the world together. They don't have to be, no way we're putting this stuff up online and you can't do anything with it. We can approach these things from both sides. So again, about that image interoperability framework that we're exploring, the power. So here's a visual example of what's possible. So these are different phases of this Stonehenge watercolor. So the Victoria and Albert Museum has a sketch. Then they have a watercolor sketch, so progression here, and then the actual watercolor from 1835. And then the British Museum over here also has a watercolor sketch, and they have letters and exhibitions and essays and related works and materials all about Stonehenge. So right now, these things are held in two different institutions, but the power of something like the image interoperability framework allows us to put those together in one canvas. So I could pull images from the British Museum, and I can pull images from the Victoria and Albert Museum. I can look at those things side by side. I can compare them. There's some really neat viewers out there that allow for this work. So this is where we want to go. We want to work with our partners for people to be able to pull data from all of these different institutions around the country and compare them and do powerful things. This relates to South Carolina. These slides aren't the greatest. They came from Stanford, so they're a little pixelated, so pardon them. But there's a dot over Columbia here because you all hold some Otto Egge manuscripts, number one. So as do all of these institutions throughout the country. So it's one of those manuscripts that they tore out page by page and they got distributed throughout the country. So institutions may hold a page, 2 pages, 3 pages. So here are the leaves that Stanford actually holds. Here is a reconstruction of a partial reconstruction of the manuscript held by institutions other than Stanford using IIIF. So they did this as a demonstration, so actually I could point, if I knew which ones. There are images here from the University of South Carolina that have been pulled to recreate this manuscript virtually that is distributed throughout the country. And with new technology, with Zoom, they have viewers that you could actually open one of these and see them side by side. You can compare them. You can look at the wear. You can look at the writing, all of those things. This is where something like the image interoperability framework takes us, and that's where we're going. And so at DPLA, we're really excited to be a part of that, and are working with this new framework to move things forward. And hopefully, we already have 2 partners who've adopted IIIF. So the Digital Commonwealth in Massachusetts and Art Store have adopted IIIF, and they're going to start serving up images that then, once we are able to grab IIIF images, we can serve those full images up on the DPLA site. So the more partners that we have that adopt, the more that we can serve up, and you as a user can take stuff from NARA, you can take stuff from South Carolina, you can take stuff from institutions throughout the country and put them, you can recreate these collections that are distributed throughout the country. Powerful, and where I think a big part of the possibility of DPLA lies. So, of course, I'm going to end on money. How do we keep this going? I think it's very important. We've had a number of wonderful blue chip funders fund the DPLA, really excited about the idea. But all of you in this room know as well as I do, grant money dries up after a while. You might keep a little bit going from here and there, but to support a full staff and all the things that we're doing, we have to really think about other models. So we're thinking about a number of models. We actually have a grant from Mellon to explore 7 different business models, and we hired a business development director who is working through those 7 different models. They range from traditional, ways of raising money like membership and sponsorship, all the way to providing services. And that grant we just got from IMLS is about Hydra services and how we might host digital repositories for people throughout the country that can't host them themselves, and provide them a powerful tool to do that is not a black box tool from a vendor. So that we're thinking about how to sustain ourselves by providing services that the community needs. So that's just one way. Our goal, I think, like any other organization, is to really become indispensable, to become part of the core and a part of the community. So when you think about digital libraries, you think about DPLA. When you think about a source to find material, you think about DPLA. We're at the top of that list. And if we can do that, if we can, not only through our culture heritage institutions, but throughout the country, if we can become pervasive, we'll know we have succeeded. So we're looking to kind of diversify that funding and really think through these models and continue to raise funds. We've been, like I said, very supportive. The granting institutions have supported us immensely, including the recent grant we just got from IMLS. So we're very thankful for that funding now, but we know that there is a long tail there, right? We've got to keep going, and so we really are already working on that. I mentioned earlier our annual conference. I just wanted to put it up. We talk about a lot of great things around working together in community and metadata and all the rights work that we're doing and how we can come together. So if you have the opportunity to attend this one or even in the future, we're going to try to hold them every year as long as time and money allows. So this one is coming up real soon, I know. But I want to close by saying DPLA is about all of us, I hope. I hope tonight, if this is the first time you've heard about DPLA, you still consider yourself part of it. If you're interested cultural heritage professional, you're a part of us. We are the community that is making this happen. So I just encourage you to think about how you might get involved no matter where you are, even if it's just talking to somebody else about it or writing an email and say, hey, I want to know more. Do follow us on Twitter, just very simple. And again, this is a reminder of our crazy website, dp.la. And a final thanks to our funders, and thank you all for having me. I really appreciate it.